by social media in its widest form. Social media is an amazing tool for people like me to get a message out, but it becomes wrong when it starts to allow this kind of malicious content on social media. So therefore, I think government needs to take a look at the Online Harms Bill again in the context of anonymity, so that Twitter knows exactly who it is, and there is a verification point that they will be able to understand who it is that has this account, why they have the account, and if there is irresponsible messaging on the account, that those people can be held responsible.
I mean, it is my understanding, I haven't spoken to a lawyer about this, that Twitter can identify these people through their algorithms and what have you, but they choose not to. And it's only when they're threatened with criminal prosecution that they actually reveal who these people are. I think there is an onus on the social media platforms to recognise the harm that is being done here and to step forward, because as you rightly say, it's not just you, it's many others who have been the subject of this particular troll actually, but of course there are a lot of other trolls out there as well. And I suppose if there is some good out of this, Diane, it will be that those social media platforms and government recognise that this is an issue that needs to be tackled.
Absolutely, and if government don't tackle this, we will still continue in the same vicious cycle of this kind of trolling. So this account is now disappeared,
yes,
but it will reappear in another guise at a different time, and the same kind of trolling and the same kind of harms will just perpetuate themselves. And we've got to make social media companies responsible and responsive to the issues that are in front of them. I, as a former member of the European Parliament, sat in the European Parliament in a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, talking about fake Facebook accounts and how those accounts have caused enormous harm to young people through cyberbullying, and in Northern Ireland that in one occasion has resulted in a terrible suicide. We cannot allow this to continue, and government needs to look at the anonymity issue, needs to make people verify their identity so that this is available should there be harms caused by it.
That was Diane Dodds speaking to me earlier on this week, and I want to thank Diane for speaking about what is a very personal issue, the death of her young son, Andrew, who just died aged 8, just before his 9th birthday. He had spina bifida from birth, but I know he brought joy to his mum and dad right throughout his short life. After the break, I'm going to pick this story up again with the solicitor, Paul Tweed, and we'll discuss that with him. And then later on in the briefing, is it time to end the war on drugs? I'll speak to a drugs expert about how drug policy in the United Kingdom is likely to evolve. But before that, let's take a look at the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. The weather continues to chop and change, turning cold this evening with the risk of some icy conditions, milder but wet and windy for a time tomorrow. Sunday, the drier and brighter day of the two this weekend. It's never quite that straightforward, however. This set of weather fronts will bring the wet and windy weather during Saturday. Ahead of that, this little weather feature's been bringing wet conditions across parts of the south with some snow over the hills. That's clearing away, but as things turn cold behind it, it could turn icy this evening. Continued ice risk over parts of northern England and southern Scotland as well, where we've got showers. But although it's turning cold this evening, by morning, cloud and rain are moving in, and that will lift the temperatures. So yes, frosty this evening, but by dawn, most of us will be back above freezing and well above across the southwest. Quite a wet start then to Saturday for most. Some heavy snow for a time over northern Scotland, over the higher routes here. And then we'll see some heavier bursts of rain, the brighter colours working from west to east across England and Wales. Much of Scotland, Northern Ireland turn brighter through the morning, but there will be showers coming in here. And then actually most of England and Wales turning drier by the afternoon with some brighter skies. Temperatures could get to double figures across the south early on, but actually again then turning colder through the afternoon, and these showers turning wintry once more over the hills of Scotland. Rain showers elsewhere and plenty of them in the west. Many eastern areas dry on Saturday night with clear skies, and that east-west split will continue into Sunday with showers across western Scotland, Northern Ireland initially, working into northwest England and Wales through the day. A few showers for southwest England as well, but much of the east and particularly the southeast dry and bright on Sunday with some sunshine, and the showers should ease from Scotland and Northern Ireland during the day as well. Again, most of those showers of rain, but some snow possible over the hills. Temperatures on Sunday back close to average for the time of year, 6 to 8 Celsius.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Welcome back. We've been talking about abusive behaviour online this afternoon and how to combat it. Earlier today, I spoke to the lawyer, Paul Tweed, who specialises in libel law, and I began by asking him how difficult of an opponent social media giants are.
They are the new battleground for us. I mean, most of my work now, where 20 years ago it would have been against the traditional media, it is now 95% of it is against Google, Facebook and the other online giants. And one of the big problems we have in the good old days, we would be aiming to get a case into court for a judge and possibly a jury to decide on it. Nowadays, with Google, Twitter, Facebook, they regard themselves as being their own judge and jury. Facebook have even taken it to the level of appointing their own oversight board, which is their jury, if you like. So we're living in a completely different world, very difficult world, and one which, as you know yourself, these things are posted and they go round the world, from London to Paris, to Singapore, to Sydney, to LA in a matter of 5 or 6 seconds. So really big questions now being asked. Can Facebook and Google still maintain that they are merely a platform as opposed to a publisher? Can they argue that they can decide who gets to stay on their platform and who they're going to suspend or take down, and yet still only be a platform? They're not a publisher.
And I mean, in this particular case involving Diane Dodds, who's an elected representative in Northern Ireland, as you know, the abuse was posted on New Year's Eve. Complaints were made from right across the community about the nature of the abuse, and yet initially Twitter allowed it to continue. The post, they didn't take any action, but just yesterday they did take action, and they said that the account would not be allowed to continue. That came about through a lot of public pressure, I would imagine, because they are self-regulating, and that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Totally. And I mean, and that's a very good point, you know, that you made at the end. You know, why did they change their mind in the implementation of their policy? The obvious reason has to be because of pressure that they're under, and they do it. But, you know, most people would not be able to, you know, create or attract that sort of pressure. And in this particularly outrageous scenario that, you know, Diane Dodds was faced with, I mean, there's no wonder that, you know, the public and the media were absolutely outraged by what had happened. But, you know, this again, you know, Twitter decide we have this all the time, you know, in a perfect world, even if they were working, you know, acting responsibly and dealing with it, you're not getting a response from them. They aren't even reacting for days, sometimes weeks. So, you know, what the only solution that I can see is that they are forced to implement and put in place an appropriate algorithm that deals with abuse, racism, harassment, all these other factors that are now becoming daily features of our society, thanks to Google and Facebook. And these companies now are multi-billion-dollar conglomerates. So that poses the next question. How can the ordinary person possibly be able to take them on with the financial war chest that they have? And we're in a situation now as lawyers where we do our best for our clients. We try to work within whatever our respective law societies allow us. And I operate, as you know, in 3 jurisdictions, you know, in England and Wales, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And there are different rules and regulations governing us in those areas. And we've got to try and adapt those as well to try and help clients as best we can to get some form of vindication. But it's a very, very difficult world.
And I think Diane Dodds herself acknowledged in the interview that I had with her that she was a public figure and therefore had a responsibility to speak out about this. You're absolutely right. So many people don't have that ability to speak out or indeed the wherewithal to pursue the matter. So finally, Paul, obviously there is an online harms bill going through Westminster at the moment. But my question to you is, given that this is a global platform, how on earth are we going to deal with this if we're going to continue to allow Twitter to self-regulate? Do you think legislation in Westminster is going to be able to deal with this issue?
Absolutely not. I mean, the 3 key words are deterrent, deterrent, and deterrent. The online harms bill does not offer any deterrent at all. As I said earlier, these companies have massive financial war chests. You know, the threat of a fine of 10 million, even 50 million, even 100 million, it's nothing to them. And at the bottom line, whenever this bill was originally debated and brought into the public domain, there was talk of criminal sanctions against directors of the social media and search engine giants. That suddenly has disappeared, at least unless the writing's too small for me to be able to read in the draft bill I've seen, but that's suddenly gone. So, you know, we're back down to financial penalty. That does not work.
So that was Paul Tweed, the libel lawyer from Northern Ireland, but he operates right across the globe, telling us about his interaction with Twitter and social media platforms. So we're going to move on to something new after the break. Coming up, we head to Scotland, where a nuclear power plant closure has raised questions about how the UK will power itself in the future. But first, we'll go to the latest headlines.
I'm Rhiannon Jones. Here are the latest headlines. Troops are being deployed at London hospitals as NHS staff absences rose 59% in a week due to COVID. The Ministry of Defence has sent around 200 personnel. A further 150 will support the North West Ambulance Service. First Minister Mark Drakeford says the Omicron storm has hit Wales, but denies the Welsh NHS has been overwhelmed. Boris Johnson has been criticised by his standards advisor over lost WhatsApp messages in the Downing Street flat renovation row. The newly released chat reveals Johnson discussed Lord Brownlow's plans for a so-called Great Exhibition at the same time as the financing for the flat. Labour says the messages with the Tory donor raise questions about cash for access and have called for an investigation. The Attorney General is considering referring the COLSTON statue toppling case to the Court of Appeal. It comes after 4 people were cleared of tearing down a monument of slave trader Edward Colston during a Black Lives Matter protest in Bristol in June 2020. Suella Braverman said the verdict is causing confusion and may trigger a review. Senior judges would have the chance to clarify the law for future cases. Novak Djokovic has thanked people around the world for their support amid his visa row ahead of the Australian Open. Meanwhile, a second tennis player, Renata Vorakova, has had her visa cancelled by immigration officials. She's being detained in the same hotel as the world #1 and has been told she must leave the country. It's reported that one other player may also be under investigation. One of Scotland's 2 nuclear power plants has now permanently shut down almost 46 years after it started generating electricity. Hunterston B in North Ayrshire provided paid jobs for thousands of people in the area. Officials say a failure to solve the problem of hundreds of cracks in bricks surrounding the reactor core meant its closure was inevitable. It's 3:31. We'll have a full update for you at the top of the hour. See you then.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
So a new rift has opened up in Labour as if there wasn't enough already. This time it's over drug policy, with London's Mayor Sadiq Khan taking an opposing view from his party leader Sir Keir Starmer. Mr Khan is trialling a scheme to decriminalise cannabis possession in parts of London. But the Labour leader has insisted he is against softening the law on drugs in recent days. So what is the correct way forward for the country? A more liberal approach, or the crackdown and harsher sentences which are currently being pursued by the government? Joining me now to discuss this is the head of operations at Volte-Face. That's an organisation led by Katia Kowalski, and Katia joins me now. Thank you very much for joining me, Katia. As I understand it, your organisation carried out some work in one of the London boroughs concerned, and as a result of that work you reported, and that's how the pilot came about. Do you want to tell us about that work that was carried out?
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on. There's been kind of a media upheave this week with a kind of information leaked from a report that we published, which will be released in due course. However, what we're seeing kind of over the last few days is a big discussion around kind of recreational legalization, decriminalization, a little bit of everything. However, I think it's really important to not conflate all the terms together, as what we're seeing is it's not actually decriminalization in London. We're going to be seeing diversion. So the mayor himself doesn't have any power to decriminalize. I know that Keir Starmer came out in opposition against the decriminalization. However, the pilot scheme and the policy that's going to be implemented was never kind of decriminalization was never at the heart of it. It's looking at diversion and diverting people away from the criminal justice system, whereas decriminalization would remove the possession of drugs from being an offence. This is a very welcome change, and it's obviously liberalising our approach to drug policy, but it's not kind of wide scale or sweeping reform. It's a measure that's actually up and down the country, already occurring, by not criminalising young people and diverting them away from the criminal justice system through education, support systems, treatment services where necessary. It's a very proactive approach. It's not just kind of simply decriminalising.
Yes, and as I understand it, it's about trying to educate young people about the harms that can be caused by cannabis. But surely you understand the concerns that this is a slippery slope, and we're going to end up decriminalising these sorts of things. And indeed, there are many concerned about what they see as gang-related violence in London and how that is all connected to drug use. So whilst the mayor may want to move in the direction of educating young people about the harm, surely there is also a need to tackle that other issue as well.
Absolutely, but I think what we've seen is that obviously criminalising low-level offences of people possessing, a small amount of cannabis, it's not helpful and a useful approach. And I think that tackling this issue by educating young people, diverting them away from the criminal justice system, giving them another chance and kind of understanding the harms associated with drugs is extremely important. And avoiding arrest and prosecution for low-level offences, particularly amongst young people, is essential to rehabilitate and provide support. Criminalising low-level offences is an impractical solution to this. And I think often what we see is that if we criminalise young people for this kind of behaviour, it doesn't actually tackle the root cause of why they might be in possession of drugs. Whereas putting them through proactive measures, educating them, rehabilitating them, treating them, does get to that root cause and prevents reoffending. We're seeing evidence for this already up and down the country, and that's why it's being trialled in London now. So I think it's important to highlight that this isn't wide scale sweeping reform, and it's certainly not decriminalisation yet. I think what we've seen in the media over the last few days with headlines saying Sadiq Khan to decriminalise cannabis, this is kind of unhelpful and not really useful. So I think it kind of further polarizes people in one direction or another. When in fact, when you lay out the cards on the table around this, it's quite it's not a socially controversial topic really at all.
And I'm a great believer in early intervention. I believe that's very much what is needed. But I hope, and you'll be able to confirm this or otherwise, Katia, that you will be, and the pilot will be, addressing some of the psychotic illnesses that can come from the use of these low-level drugs. I hope that that's part of what's going to be talked about.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, treatment is one kind of the aspects of this. Obviously, it will vary in terms of what kind of intervention will be applied. I think it's going to be taking very much a person-based approach. So whether that person's put through an education measures or whether it's treatment services, I think it will apply based on the person at hand.
Katja, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I think certainly there needs to be something done about what's happening with drugs, certainly in our capital, and it's very important that we deal with that. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. So we're going to move now to Scotland, where the Hunterston B nuclear power station will shut down forever at noon earlier today after 46 years of service, reducing the UK's nuclear capacity by 1/8 in the middle of an energy crisis. The plant produced enough energy to power 1.7 million homes. Nuclear power could prove to be a vital issue for our energy source in the quest to reach net zero. So why are perfectly capable energy sources being closed down? Joining me now is the Scottish Conservative MSP and Shadow Secretary for Net Zero, Liam Kerr. Liam, you're very welcome to the show. We last spoke, I think, around the Campbell oil field, of course, that issue off the coast of Aberdeen, when we were talking about the need to have diversity in our supply of energy. And now, today, we're talking about nuclear. What's happening in Scotland today?
Well, thank you for having me on, Arlene, again. And the issue there that you've absolutely highlighted is this point about diversity of energy supply. What we have in Scotland is an SNP government which is fundamentally opposed to nuclear power in Scotland. But they take that position without having a credible plan as to how to keep the lights on or how to keep our bills down. Now, that's in the context of the Climate Change Committee saying that by 2050 we will need 4 times as much clean electrical power as we use today. And yet the SNP cannot come up with the solution to how you square that absent nuclear power.
And I mean, it is the reality that one of Nicola Sturgeon's great allies, Emmanuel Macron, is seeing nuclear as part of the way forward. In fact, he's talking about building new small nuclear plants to try and help with the energy position in France. Surely nuclear has to be part of the issue of dealing with climate change in the future.
Well, that's a very interesting point that you bring Macron and France into this, because, of course, the European Commission later this month will publish its proposals as to whether nuclear can be considered a climate-friendly investment. The French, of course, the Finns, the Swedes are very much in favour of that being the conclusion. Interestingly, Germany appears to think that it shouldn't be, but they would be much more in favour of gas being that source of energy. And we've seen that Nicola Sturgeon's already got severe difficulties in working out what she wants to do with the Campbell oil field that you mentioned earlier. So yes, nuclear would seem to be, at least the way the European Commission might be going, and we'll find out at the end of this month, part of the solution. The US Energy Secretary during COP26 said that nuclear would be an essential tool which would allow us to decarbonise. And as I say, the Climate Change Committee are part of this, talking about how we will need by 2050 a significant amount of clean electricity, and that nuclear may well be part of the solution to that.
Well, certainly I've been reading some experts who say that it's very much part of decarbonising the UK economy in the future. But just finally, Liam, the issue of the cost of living is becoming a really big political story all over the UK. And indeed, it's a very real world issue for many, many citizens across the UK. That inequality is set to grow unless we have UK energy policies that actually will address that inequality. Surely nuclear has to be part of that answer.
I have to say, Arlene, I think that's an extremely important point that you make, because just like with Campbell and with oil and gas, the more reliant we are on foreign imports to service our energy needs, the more we're exposed to not meeting our net zero targets, to ruining our security of supply, to failing to do the fair and managed transition of jobs that we require. And perhaps above all, in the context of the question that you raised, the UK consumer is exposed to significantly higher bills. That, to me, seems like a deeply irresponsible position for the Scottish Government to be taking over any of its policies, just imposing more fuel poverty and higher bills on the UK consumer. And I think the Scottish Government desperately needs to reconsider its position on this.
Well, Liam, I'm surprised that this story isn't right across the whole of the UK today and people talking about it, but I'm really grateful that you came on GB News this afternoon to talk to me about it, so thank you very much for coming on. Now, today marks the 7th year anniversary of that awful terror attack on the Charlie Hebdo offices in Paris. The assault on freedom of speech was one of the most shocking moments in Europe's fight against the scourge of terrorism. And joining me now in the studio is GB News Home Affairs and Security expert Mark White. And Mark, we remember that day very well, and of course it went on for a number of days after that as well, but just tell us about your memories of that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all remember, because the video was so widely circulated, the very shocking moment that one of the police officers responding to that incident was shot and wounded, lying on the pavement, and someone filming from a building above, looking down, sees the moment that this terrorist stands over that officer and shoots him dead. I mean, it was just appalling. And of course, in the offices themselves, a number of staff and contributors to this satirical magazine were killed. As you say, it continued really for a few days until that final standoff in a kosher supermarket that brought this finally to an end. And then, months later, towards the back end of the year, it was followed, of course, by the Bataclan attacks. More than 130 people killed there. Absolutely shocking year, that 2015 into 2016 for Paris and France in general, where they had so many terrorist attacks. But it has still continued really in the years since, not to the same degree, but they are still having significant issues with Islamist extremism in particular. Just at Christmas time there, a couple of weeks before, they arrested 2 people in connection with a planned Christmas attack that was either going to attack shopping centres or other crowded places using knives and explosives. So it's still there, still going on. The police are being targeted as well. Last year, police officers, one was killed, another was injured in 2 separate attacks. So they have an ongoing problem.
And at the time, and I was looking back at some of the reports from 7 years ago today, it was very much seen as an attack on democracy because this was a satirical magazine. And of course, satire has been around our democracies for hundreds of years, Mark. And it was really seen to be an attack on society, wasn't it?
Yes, and it was all to do, of course, with the publication of images of the Prophet Muhammad, which, of course, as far as many Muslims are concerned, is, very, very insulting to their religion to have images of the Prophet circulated. But of course, as you say, this was seen right across France and the wider world as an issue around freedom of expression. And of course, that magazine, again today, continues to publish those images in defiance of the jihadists who would carry out murder in the name of that prophet and the insult that they say they were suffered, or subjected to, I should say.
And as we were talking about, it continued for a couple of days, this attack, and actually it was like a manhunt across northern France to try and track down, first of all, the 2 brothers that were involved, and then, as you say, it ended in a supermarket.
Yes, and the whole nation was on high alert. Clearly a very shocking event had taken place. It was similar, I think, the reactions of people in France to what was experienced here in the UK on 7/7 when we had those terrible attacks on the London Underground system and that bus in Tavistock Square. And of course, everybody on edge, not knowing where the next attack might come from. And of course, that was followed 2 weeks later by the 21/7 failed attacks. And that really set people on edge. And it was similar, I think, in France, with people very worried about these terrorists on the run. And of course, they've known, as I say, a number of terrorist attacks and tragedies. I was in Nice just last year when an attack took place at the cathedral there. And a poor parishioner there was beheaded and others killed. I mean, it was just absolutely appalling. It continues on, and there is a battle at the moment in terms of the French president and the French government being seen as being actually very anti-Islam by those who are more extreme in their viewpoint, and of course that is sometimes being, in terms of the extremist point of view, manifesting itself in these terrorist attacks. Not just the plot at Christmas, but there is an investigation underway at the moment because of a bombing in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, attacking French citizens there taking part in the Paris to Dakar rally. So it's still ongoing.
Yeah, so it's still there. And I mean, that's just what I was going to finish on, actually, Mark. What about the future risks? Given this is a French presidential election year, the election's happening in April, surely there is a capacity for these sorts of things to escalate in the coming months?
There is big concern. The French president has taken over, of course, the presidency of the European Union. The elections are coming up. It is often a time during election campaigns where the extremists will look to target French interests and to sow discourse and fear. So there is some real concern that might be the case. And in this country as well, remember the terrorist threat currently is severe. It's a Europe-wide problem. And here the counter-terrorism police officers that I've been speaking to have issued a warning again today for people to be extra vigilant, to not let their guard down, despite the fact that thankfully we had no attacks over the festive period.
Thankfully indeed. Thank you, Mark, for joining me this afternoon. Thank you. So Kazakhstan's authoritarian leader has said that he has ordered security forces to fire without warning amid a violent crackdown on anti-government protests. President Tokayev also said 20,000 bandits had attacked the main city of Almaty, the epicentre of protests sparked by a fuel price hike. He has blamed foreign-trained terrorists without giving any evidence. This comes as Russia has deployed thousands of what the Kremlin is calling peacekeepers to Kazakhstan to help quell the civil unrest. Joining me now to discuss this is Eastern European expert Sergei Semlene. Sergei, you're very welcome. Do you want to give us an update on what is happening there today?
Oh, thank you. Yes, Russian warplanes, Russian transport warplanes have arrived today to Kazakhstan, having brought some hundreds of Russian airborne troops. And we need to see who is the leading of this invasion, because it's clearly an invasion in violation of even existing treaty on collective defense, because the treaty says that only in the case of the foreign aggression this treaty can be used. There is no foreign aggression in Kazakhstan. So who's leading this Russian invasion forces? It is Russian commander of airborne troops, Andrei Serdukov, who was Russian commander while annexing Crimea, who was Russian commander in Donbass in Ukraine, and he was Russian commander over the troops in Syria, where the Russian troops committed war crimes. So this is really a very bad sign, and we know that Russian troops never come to leave. So once Russians are in, they're never out.
And I mean, I think that's probably why we've heard the president talk about foreign terrorists to give some sort of justification for the Russians being there today. Where is the president at the moment, as far as you're concerned? Is he still in Kazakhstan?
We don't know it, but I think that for Tokayev there is no reason now, after Russians have arrived, to leave his country. Actually, that is very close to what happened in Ukraine in early 2014, as Putin actually tried to force that time Ukrainian President Yanukovych to accept Russian army and remain in power in exchange for selling out Ukrainian independency. But Yanukovych decided to leave the country and lives since then in Russian exile. Now here in Kazakhstan, Tokayev has decided to sell independency of his country to Putin and to accept Russian troops. So for me, there is no reason for Tokayev to leave the country. He will remain a marionette president under Russian military presence.
Yes, but there were some reports today, and maybe you could confirm them or otherwise, that the president's home had been attacked. Is that the case?
That can be. We know very less what happens in Kazakhstan right now, because Tokayev has crack down internet. There are no media which can operate freely. We know that media teams have been attacked with gunfire. Yesterday, a camera team of Kazakh TV channel had been attacked. The driver was killed. The journalist was wounded. There is no internet, no access of people to the streets. We know that there are about over 30 protesters killed with gunshots by the police. We see some videos from different cities with Russian tanks patrolling the streets, and we hear gunfire, but we know nothing about what really happens. I'm afraid there is a lot of disinformation now in official Kazakh media, and of course they want to demonstrate that these so-called terrorists attack police, attack authorities, etc. And of course, it's a very good sign to say, yeah, they have attacked the home of the presidents. That's why we need to fight back. I would not trust every news now which is coming from Kazakhstan, especially if it says that there is violence against the authorities.
Well, Sergey, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Undoubtedly, this is a story we'll have to return to in the coming days, but I'm very glad that you were able to come up and give us the up-to-date position on what was happening in Kazakhstan. You've been watching The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster. It's good to be back, and I'll be back next Friday at 3 p.m. Up next, it's Nana Akua.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, it's looking rather changeable across the UK through this weekend, with some heavy rain and some strong winds for many parts on Saturday. Sunshine and showers, though, by Sunday, and temperatures will be a little bit higher than they have been of late. If we look at the pressure pattern then, you can see the reason why. This frontal system will continue to spread in from the west over the next 24 hours, bringing that heavy rain and strong winds. But ahead of it, some quite cold air in place across the UK. So as we see rain clearing eastern parts, a real risk of some icy patches across parts of England, with a warning in force for that. But cloud will thicken as we head through the night as rain spreads its way eastward. Some of that rain could be quite heavy, and we could see a spell of snow across high ground in northern England and Scotland for a time once again. It'll still be cold in the east, but further towards the west, those temperatures will lift through the night, so turning noticeably milder as we head through the early hours of Saturday morning. So we get off to a rather wet start on Saturday morning, a really quite disappointing start to the weekend, really. Some quite heavy rain around, still some snow across high ground of Scotland for a time, and particularly heavy rain across South Wales and southwest England through the day, and still those strong winds accompany that rain as well. Now, gradually that will clear the southeast later on in the day, and behind it, brighter, sunnier sky, still a rash of showers though, and again wintry across parts of the north, and still staying windy with gales towards the southwest. A milder day though, like I said. Now, through the rest of Saturday into the evening and overnight, still a mixture then by this point of clear spells and showers. Some of the showers again could be quite heavy, particularly